This is O-Talk, a podcast covering the Ontario Hockey League. From people within the game. Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Yo, the voice cracks are back.
What's happened? That keeps happening, man. We're just going to run with it. Welcome back to the O-Talk podcast, our first podcast with all three of us potentially in probably like a month. I'm Jordan Jacklin, joined always alongside of Frankie Benvenuti and Josh Kim. Starting with you, Frankie. How you doing?
Nervous for playoffs, I think, is the overriding feeling right now.
Yeah, we were mentioning off air. This is kind of that in between stage where, where the jitters are going, you could especially imagine the players are feeling it. How is it going for you, Josh, and with Barrie?
Yeah, doing well. Staying busy. Apologies that we couldn't get the trio of us on for an episode, but, work calls, life happens, and go Generals.
What a dumb jersey to wear today.
I'm kidding, of course. I love the 67s almost as much as the Colts, but I don't have a 67s jersey, and I had to bring out just to see the reaction. I wanted to add a little spice to the episode. But we're getting into some heavy topics, so I think we should hit the ground running and get after
it.
Well,
I do want to say first, it was an absolute great honor to welcome the one and only Josh Kim to Ottawa last weekend.
Oh man, that's right. Paid a visit.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The routine's different there, eh?
I didn't try it. Frankie told me not to try it anymore, so I just didn't even bother.
The poutine has been underwhelming at TD Place this year. Like, it's a real disappointment because it was among the best in the league. I think we should actually put together a poutine power rankings. I think
we should. Got to say hi to fellow guest, our very first guest, Caden Kelly. That was fun. We actually have a hilarious story because like Frankie and I, obviously, we're just chatting, talking about hockey, and all of a sudden the 67s comes jogging past us, and like Luca Pinelli, gives me a nod and everything, gives us a nod. Caden Kelly jogs by, and we just lock eyes for like a solid 5 seconds, it felt like. And he's like, "Where do I know you from?" And Frankie's like, "Well, you better know him. He definitely is familiar." And then the realization set in. So that's right, guys. We do know people in the league still. Just saying.
Josh's catchphrase. So let's just jump right into our first segment here and talking about the draft lottery for the OHL priority selection. I'll hand it off to David Branch to carry the words for me.
The first overall selection in the first round of the 2023 OHL priority selection and the winner of the lottery belongs to the Erie Otters.
So there we have it, the Erie Otters winning
that guy
the draft
should
lottery.
Read audiobooks for Robert Munch. What a voice.
Nice voice, and I really like the draft setup that the league had. They had the whole logo on the card thing, even though it's just 4 teams. Like, I liked it. It made it look a lot more professional.
So we'll just go through this quick here. Obviously, we have the OHL Cup coming up. That's a huge opportunity for all the kids going in this. Frankie, what can we expect? Who's a name we can even just look out for coming up?
Well, I think one of the only ones that I'm really familiar with at this point is Dylan Rubrick's brother. And to be honest, I couldn't even tell you his first name right now.
Ryan Rubrick.
Ryan Rubrick. Okay. But my understanding, he is probably the consensus first overall pick. I was told by Kenny Walls that he actually just missed out on exceptional status last year with Michael Misa.
Just missed out is the right word. Like, you kind of get accepted or denied, though.
No, but in terms of like,
but he was on the radar.
He was on the radar.
Oh, okay, yeah, he was on the radar. He applied for it. Yeah.
He had the potential to get it, and he was close. Like he was certainly up for consideration. And in an alternate reality where Michael Misa doesn't exist, maybe he's already a Saginaw Spirit. So, I think for Erie, it's a great pick. Assuming he commits, and that's who they do end up going with. So it'll be interesting. Like I find it interesting that 2 years in a row now, exceptional talents, one way or another, are going to find themselves in the U.S. more than likely.
Yeah, definitely. And let's just move right on to Saginaw, who will be hosting the 2024 Memorial Cup. It's the first time since Spokane in 1998 that the Memorial Cup is being hosted by an American team. What do we think of the choice, lads? Starting with you, Josh.
I think it's the right move to make. I think we had a talk about this on the show when the names first dropped for the bids, and I'm like, there is a clear runaway favorite here. And at the end of the day, the OHL did the correct choice. Now, I'm not a huge fan of having it in a host city where the team itself plays in the tournament. I don't like that at all, but I think we can get into that a little closer to the Memorial Cup time. But I mean, if you look at the other three options, come on. Like, we're talking Niagara. That's an easy one to pick on. Their team's not very good. They're not going to be good next year. They have a nice facility and the fan base is great, but that's pretty much all they have because right now that team's in shambles. Aside from Kevin He, who is actually a friend of the show now because we talk. But the Sioux, I mean, they're good too, but again, their team's not going to be very good next year. They're so far away. I think that actually did play a little bit into that because like that is just like an astronomical distance to travel for a Memorial Cup. And then Kingston was intriguing because they have a great fan base. I went there like last week with the Colts. They have a great fan base, even though the team's not very good, but the team is not very good, which is kind of the main issue. But the location's great. Like Kingston would be phenomenal to host the Memorial Cup. Although I will say, and I was talking to some staff members while I was there, the problem with that arena is that the tunnels and the visiting dressing rooms are horrendous. Like they'd probably have to go through a lot of renovation to even like make that work for more than two teams playing in that building. So that like left Saginaw, and like if you look at the OHL and what they're trying to do, they have Michael Misa on that team. Saginaw already sold a bunch of their pieces so they could be an elite team next year. And honestly, like most importantly, the league is trying to grow the game in the United States and give us Americans at least the opportunity to play junior hockey in somewhere that is not a college arena. So with all that being said, they made the right choice. Saginaw deserved it. And it's a little unfortunate for us because I don't know if we're going to be going because Saginaw's a little far. It's far for me and Jordan. It's even further for Frankie. So
yeah,
who knows,
it's like a 7.5 hour drive from where we are.
Yeah. So I don't know. They did make the right choice. Maybe not for us, but they made the right choice.
Josh kind of hit the nail on the head there. Like the first thing I want to, I guess, dunk on Niagara a little bit because that bid was never realistic. Like to me, that was an entire plea to the fan base. Like, hey, look, we've done something positive. There was no world where Niagara was going to host this Memorial Cup next year. In terms of like playing at the States, I think it makes a ton of sense to happen. What we are now 3 years after, the top American recruits defected to the USHL. We went through a draft and Adam Fantilli decided to go play in college and Nicholas Moldenauer went and decided to go play in college. So, I think bringing the CHL to them when the NCAA is pulling so hard in the opposite direction right now it makes a lot of sense to me. So, I think it makes sense for Saginaw. It also justifies the trading of Pavel Mintyukov, which I think for their fan base is...
Well, we all saw that coming, though. Like Mintyukov was probably going to be traded regardless because he was not coming back next year.
Well, 100%. But so if they, go after this bid, they put all their eggs in that basket and then for whatever reason they don't get it, right? It's difficult to swallow then. Even though like the trade still puts them in a good spot for next year. Now they have that security knowing even if this is a tough playoff run, which we'll get to that, I think it will be, they have that next year.
Yeah, I agree with Frankie, and I think another important note is more than likely Barrie Colts legend Hunter Haight will be playing in the Memorial Cup next year. Just wanted to toss that out there just for jokes, but we can move on.
Yes, let's move on to our playoff preview, guys. This is going to be
Where's
huge.
The animation, Jordan? Where's like
this
the
is
sound
gonna
effects,
be huge.
the whooshing?
Do it yourself. No, but we're going to start off.
Whoosh, and here we go.
So this is going to basically be our playoff bracket for round one. And we're just going to go swing. I was thinking we just start off with the West and end off in the East. How do you guys feel about that?
Yep, I like that. I don't want to end the West.
Add some insight into the East, but let's hit off the West.
We're just kind of going to go through it. So the first seed, Windsor, finished off the season 44-18-4-2, going up against the Kitchener Rangers 33-29 6-0. They finished 8th, barely squeaked in there, but they made it. And obviously, this is going to be huge. The key stats in terms of Windsor has an plus 80 goal differential. Kitchener has a plus 17. Now, what makes the Rangers interesting to me, they were 3rd in the West in goals against in terms of 240. They actually play a decent team defense. They have some decent goaltending. So that kind of makes it interesting. And Windsor's 6-4 in their last 10 games of the regular season. Kitchener's 5-3-2. What do we expect to see here, guys? And could this be closer than what it might seem based off the seeding?
Night Kitchener, man. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Good night.
Interesting.
Good night, Irene, on that one.
I'm on the opposite perspective here.
So
I think
am I.
this is
So
like
I think
it's gonna be close.
it's gonna be close, but I think it's Windsor in like 5 or 6. I don't think it's going 7 either.
See, to me, if there was ever an 8-1 upset, this is the series where
that's what I was thinking.
I'm not saying it will, but if we are ever going to
if
see
there's
one,
ever
this
an 8-1
series,
upset, no, the 8-1 upset is the Gens over Ottawa. No,
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no,
kidding.
but this Kitchener team is just
Okay, I need to hear your logic because I think this is like worst case scenario for Kitchener, and it actually ended up happening. And if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm panicking right now.
yes. I mean, they are not going to have an easy run in this playoffs.
No, they're not.
It's going to be absolutely miserable for them. But to their credit, when they have played the top teams this year, they have been okay.
Oh,
if I
for
was
God's
halfway
sake.
prepared for this, I got the record against everybody in the top 4 in the conference, but I didn't do that. They just seem to play Windsor and London really close. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win, Josh, but if I was Windsor, I just would have rather to play someone else.
Okay, I will agree with you on that one. If I was Windsor, I would definitely want to play someone else because you really never know if or when the Francesco Pinellis or the Philip Machars or like any of those guys are actually going to wake up and go off. Because Philip Machar, first round NHL pick, like the argument could be made that he's been underperforming this year based on just like how Kitchener's been doing. If he pops off and goes like 1.5, 2 points per game, then we're looking at an interesting conversation because obviously if Pinelli keeps it up, Reed Vlad has had a good OA year. Like if those guys actually pop off, then yeah, we're going to have a nice head to head. But like, I just don't see it. Kitchener's never done it all year. And I was worried at the fact that they were going to play someone like Windsor and like where it's going to be star players against star players. Their star players have not been cutting it all year. And I really don't think that just when the time really matters, I don't think there's any value in saying like, oh, they're going to turn it on just for this series, right? Like I don't see that.
Windsor, to me, I mean, the X factor here is Shane Wright. 15 goals, 37 points in 20 games since returning to the OHL. We've kind of saw in the World Juniors that he can be silent, but showed up in the gold medal game. He can't be quiet like that in terms of the OHL playoffs. He has to be the dominant self, and I think that's probably going to be the reason why Windsor takes this in a hard-fought 6 games. I think they win and make maybe even game 6
okay.
overtime.
I could get behind 6 games.
So
Frankie, like, I need to hear why is Kitchener going to win?
Just I don't think Kitchener's going to win.
But you think it's going to be close, though?
I think it's going to be close. And if
like 7, you think it's going 7?
I think it depends on how the first 2 games go. Like if Windsor comes out and absolutely dominates game 1 and wins 7-1, I can see hope falling apart in that Kitchener locker room very quickly, and they'll be done in 5. Right? If they come out, and I think worst case scenario is Windsor loses game 1 for them. Because now you have that Kitchener team believing, and with the players they have, you have to squash that immediately. So if they come, like I could see a world where this is done in 4, and I could see a world where this goes 6 or 7. But for now, what I'm going to say is I have Windsor in 6.
Okay, I'll take Windsor in 6 as well, just because I think, and I know I'm backtracking and almost contradicting myself right now, but thinking about it in the last couple of weeks. Like 2 of the hottest players on Kitchener have been Francesco Pinelli has been phenomenal, and he was in a slump earlier this year. Matthew Sopp has actually been really good lately too, and Kitchener kid, and I keep watching the highlights that the Rangers put out. But like him, Danny Zhilkin's been good ever since joining from Guelph. Let's just say if Philip Machar wakes up and if Leighton Moore does what he did in Oshawa, then we might have like a different conversation on our hands. Like it's a bunch of what ifs. But Kitchener has some hot players right now, and I think what we're all just like avoiding right now is I think it depends on if the real Marco Constantini shows up in the playoffs. He's been rather inconsistent this year, and I think he's the difference maker in the series, much like Shane Wright is, but like maybe to a lesser degree.
And just to quickly add on Matthew Maggio, we should probably mention him. You know, leads the league with 111 points. He might honestly be the guy as well.
But also, like they have one of the best rookies. Greentree's one of the best rookies in the league. Cristoforo's one of the better offensive D-men in the league. Like, it's going to be hard. I'm sorry, Kitchener fans. It's going to be hard.
And I think that's part of it, right? When you have such a team that's underachieved all year, like they haven't beaten Windsor yet this year. I just checked that, but they do play them close, and especially in the latter half of the season, I think uh, Kitchener's actually not been horrible. So,
No,
if
ever
it
since
came,
Mike McKenzie took over, they've been actually like okay, still
they,
underperforming, I
yeah,
guess, for their standards, but they've been all right.
yeah. But when you have that many veteran players, right? I think not that you can just turn it on, but I think the fear exists that they'll be able to piece just enough together to, even if it's not take you out, give you a really difficult ride, and then you got to go into round two having come off the back of an exceptionally difficult series.
Fair enough.
Alrighty, guys, let's head on to the next series here. We're talking London Knights, finishing the year second in the West, 45-21, 2-0 record, going up against the Owen Sound Attack. They had a 33-28, 6-1 record, seventh in the rest. And here are some key stats. So goals for, London leads 269 to 248. Goals against, Owen Sound's giving up 258 compared to London's 214. So Owen Sound has a negative 10 goal differential on the entire season. London's got a plus 55. However, what's intriguing to me is London is 4-6 in their last 10 games. Owen Sound 4-2. What are our predictions for that series? I'll start this time with you, Josh.
I'm taking Owen Sound in this series.
Oh boy.
I'm taking Owen Sound. And the reason I'm taking Owen Sound over London, it's going to be close and it might go 7, but I'm taking Owen Sound because I think they are so neglected by every team in this league that they're just going to go on a hot streak and just do the thing. Like, maybe not win it all, but like they have the potential to go far. And the reason I say that is because looking beyond like their star players, I guess, they have such a well-rounded team, in my opinion. They have a more well-rounded team than I think a lot of people think. Colby Barlow has been stealing the headlines all year long. But I think if you look past that, you look at the Servac Petrovskis, if you look at the Denny Gores, if you look at the supporting cast that helps Colby Barlow in that regard, I think if this is like the series where the upsets are definitely possible, I'm picking this one. And no discredit to London because I think they're a phenomenal team. They're really well run, and obviously, they have the star players they need to succeed. I'm not really buying into the hype in London this year. I don't know. I that's just me. Like I don't think they've been as good as advertised since the trade deadline. I think they've been underperforming, almost eerily similar to the way Kitchener's been underperforming. Brett Brochu hasn't been phenomenal, and like their goal scoring has it's still been there with we see the goal differential, but like I think they rode a really hot streak leading up to the deadline, and when they added all those pieces at the deadline, they didn't really go higher. They kind of they almost sank a little bit. So that's just me. I'm taking Owen Sound in 7.
What about you, Frankie?
I'll lead with, we couldn't have been blessed with a better bracket on the West side. This is going to be a absolute gauntlet for every team that managed to make it out. Like, again, I could see a world where, based on London's recent form, that Owen Sound does manage to get out of this round. I don't see it with them. And I think a lot of it comes down to goaltending. Like, I know Brett Brochu hasn't been amazing recently, but I
forgot to mention goaltending is going to be the difference maker in this series because Owen Sound has a secret weapon. It's just playing in Junior A right now. So we'll see if they can actually make the appropriate moves to adjust.
Is that secret weapon George Carter?
Carter George, but yeah.
Carter George, sorry. But either way, like if it is Votary or Sharon, I just or Chenard, yeah. I just don't think either of them really match up to Brett Brochu, no matter how much trouble Brochu has found himself in recent times. So again, I don't know with this one. This is a hard one to call. I would have to imagine that London's talent is going to win out here eventually. But again, if Owen Sound can get through games 1 and 2 and come out 1-1 and go back with home ice, I think it's a different series. So I have a hard time with this one. I have a really hard time with this one.
Game one might be the difference maker.
This one's interesting to me because the high-end talent isn't too crazy on both sides. Like, obviously, Colby Barlow's amazing, but on London, their highest scorer is Sean McGurn. So, and there's a very vast, very minuscule difference between him and Barlow. So it's the depth on London that's obviously going to sink or swim them. They got a better D core as well. But I would say if I was to make a prediction, this is also maybe London in 6. I think it could be close. And I think game 1 is ultimately going to be the move. So what's your prediction there, Frankie, then?
I'm actually going to go London in 5.
Wow. Credit to Colby Barlow. Colby Barlow's going to steal you 1 game only? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, I think London is just the better team. I think they're better coached. I think they have the better goaltending, and in the playoffs, that matters. Now we'll see what Owen Sound does in terms of physicality, because I think that's the one area where they can really beat the crap out of London. But for now, I'm going London in 5.
Well, it seems like we're in agreement so far. Now we're getting into the closer series in the West. Starting off now with Sarnia, who finished 41-18-5-4 for third in the West, against the Guelph Storm, who finished 35-28-4-1. They were 6. Some key stats: goals for, Sarnia led the way, 298 to 254. In terms of goals against, Guelph gave up 280, while Sarnia only gave up 224. And for the Storm, they're 8th in goals against in the West, not their strong suit. And just looking at goal differential, Sarnia plus 74 compared to Guelph's 30. Both of them are generally hot coming into this playoff. Sarnia going 8-1 in their last 10, Guelph 6-4. Starting with you, Frankie, how do you see this series shaking out?
GG's WP to Guelph, I think. They're red hot coming in, but everything that they do well, I think Sarnia just does better. They have decent goaltending. Sarnia has Ben Gaudreau. Sarnia has just a loaded defense, and Guelph has a decent team. Like I just think, not that this is so vast that Guelph couldn't possibly come away with a game. I'm going Sarnia in 4.
Wow, interesting take there. What about you, Josh? Are you in agreement there?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm going Sarnia in 5. I think Guelph does manage the sneaky game just because they're riding such a hot streak. But to Frankie's point, he hit it right on the head there. Like, everything that Guelph has. Oh, first of all, I should say, in like one of the first episodes of the show, I think we all wrote off Guelph to not even make the playoffs. So I think them entering as the 6th seed, let alone making the playoffs in itself, is a win. So I know they were atrocious in the first half. Kudos to them for actually hitting their stride and being a decent team. But yeah, Frankie's right. I think whatever Guelph has, Sarnia just has a better version. Obviously, Ben Gaudreau takes the cake in net. Michael Bushinger and Cam Mallon are 2 phenomenal defensemen, but you're looking at D-Corps on the other side that has Ethan Del Mastro, Christian Kyrou, and just like good depth in general. Like even Nolan Dillingham, their captain, has been phenomenal this year. And up front, it's not really that close. I mean, I do think the storyline of like Sasha Pastujov coming back and like beating Guelph in the first round is really interesting. And I think Maxim Mestikov is going to be hungry for some redemption after Sarnia traded him. But yeah, Sarnia is just too good. Ty Voigt's been insanely good. Nolan Burke has been lethal. Luca Del Belbaluz has fit in really well in the top 6. And I just think, yeah, Sarnia is just an overall better team. And I don't know. I'm not really holding out too much hope for Guelph, but maybe they'll prove us wrong. I don't know.
Hey, they've played fantastic. So credit to them to get up to 6th place.
Credit to them. Yeah.
I do believe they're still generally pretty young team, so that bodes well for their future. It's just kind of luck of the draw that they're going to get a red hot team as well right now.
Have to mention Toronto Maple Leafs prospect Ty Voigt, 2nd in league scoring as well, will be a X factor for that. X factor for that Sting squad. Let's head into the last one here. This could end up being the closest one just based off seeding. The Saginaw Spirit, that young group, 36-27, 3-2, 4th in the West, going up against the Flint Firebirds, 35-28, 4-1 for 5th in the West. And obviously some key stats going into this one. Goals for, Flint leading 291 to 244. The Firebirds are 3rd in the West overall in that category. And looking at goals against, though, it's actually Flint that's leading with 278 compared to Saginaw's 244. So the Firebirds 6 overall in the West. So they score a ton, but they do give up a ton. Saginaw 5-3, 1-1 in their last 10. Flint a hot 8-2 in their last 10 games in the regular season. Frankie, how do you see this one going?
Is it really an upset if we say Flint is going to win this one?
No, it's not.
No.
It's not really an upset. These two teams are neck and neck and have been pretty much the whole year. I think it's really good that we're getting a Michigan playoff series. Like, that's really exciting. That's really cool. I'll toss it to you, Frank. I'm still mulling this one over a little bit.
Ever since Saginaw traded Mintyukov away, they just haven't been the same team, right? But at the same time, Flint is a team that also traded away their best player. Coincidentally, I think it's interesting how this has worked out. That they traded Othman early in the year, and Saginaw traded Mintyukov halfway through it. So I think again, this is going to be an interesting series to call. I really like Flint in it right now, just because I think they're the better team overall. Would it shock me if Michael Misa came out and scored 17 points in 6 games and dragged his team to the second round? Not really. I really don't know how to call this one.
And don't
right,
count out.
You know what? I'll give you one. I'm going to go Flint in 6.
And a guy, underrated asset. I mean, Zane Perrick. I mean, this guy broke league history in terms of rookie goals by a defenseman this year. How he performs in the playoffs is going to be quite interesting to me, because obviously that absence of Mintyukov is going to be huge for this team. So if I'm going to say Flint in 6 for this one as well.
And I want to point out, with Perrick's ability to go up there and score like that, a lot of that has to do with the value Saginaw puts on their defensemen playing defense versus playing offense. And if you watched Mintyukov play when he was there, clearly very little value was placed on having him back and ready to play defense. So
he was a forward, basically.
Essentially, yeah. So Saginaw would rather score 8 goals and give up 6 than win 4-2, right? So I think that's certainly something to watch for this, because if they do find themselves pressing high and, say Will Cranley stands on his head, the series will be very, very interesting. It's going to be a high-scoring series.
Definitely, and I'll be curious to see the goaltending matchup there too. I'm guessing it's going to be Andrew Oke for Saginaw going into this one, currently 17th in the league for goalies that have started a minimum 10 games. How does he match up? That'll be the question going in. But that's covered the West, Gus, so we can now move on to the East.
Are you just going to skip over? Are you going to skip over?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Kim. Yeah, you got to go.
I think Flint's taking it. I'm going to go with either in 6 or 7. I think the experience that they bring is very valuable in a series like this, and Saginaw is obviously the much younger team, and it'll be tough. I think I'd rather have like the Riley Piercy's in a playoff, like Riley Piercy type players in a playoff series versus like a high flying scoring team. I think Amadeus Lombardi is a better offensive talent than a lot of the Saginaw forwards. And you guys talk about having like a guy like Zane Perek on the blue line. Like, on the flip side of that, like Dmitry Kuzmin has been one of the better offensive defensemen, and he's on Flint. So like it all evens out. I think for Flint to take this on experience alone is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I think Lombardi's going to pop off in the series. He's been on fire lately. And I think the only saving grace that I could say for Saginaw is they have a far better goaltending outlook on this series than Flint does. And like, if you get past Andrew Oke and he's like shaky and you have to get him out of there, Tristan Lennox just signed an entry-level contract. He's not a bad goalie either. So if Saginaw's going to win it, it's going to be on the back of their goaltending, and they could do that. But I think Flint, with the experience and the way that roster is constructed, I think in a series like this where it's going to be intense, and as Frankie said, it's going to be high scoring and it's going to be like extra passionate because it's Michigan, I think Flint takes it, just based off of like the way this series is kind of like the strategy they're going to have to play to win.
Fascinating. So it looks like none of us are really calling any huge upsets in the West. We just think
except me. I think Owen Sound's beating London, but
so that will be the interesting one to follow there. Let's see if it's similar in the East, and we'll start out with Frankie's Ottawa 67s.
Man, you should just let Frankie talk about this.
Well, I'll just tee it up. I mean, they finished first, obviously, in the whole league with a record of 51-12, 3-2. They're going up against the Oshawa Generals, who, squeaked into the playoffs with a record of 26, 36, 1-5. Goals for 286 to 235 in favor of the 67s. Goals against. Ottawa only gave up 171 goals compared to the Generals 290. It's the biggest goal differential difference between any series. Ottawa's a plus 115.
Goodness.
So Ottawa's a plus 115. Oshawa is a negative 55. That's
Wow.
interesting. Ottawa's 9-1 in their last 10 games of the regular season. Oshawa 2-8. Frankie, take it away.
Got it. Okay, well,
So-
sorry. Before you start, Frankie, Jordan, when you lay it out statistically like that, that is incredible.
But
Stat-wise.
that's our typical 1 versus 8 series, right? That's why I said if there's ever going to be a 1 versus 8 upset, Kitchener versus Windsor looks like it, could be that one. So, man, I want to start with something that Oshawa does really, really well, and that's their power play. Ottawa's power play started the year really well, and since it's been kind of fading a little bit, I think there's it's still a good power play. It'll still find the back of the net quite often, but if Ottawa wants to win the series, this is one of the big things that's been highlighted is staying out of the penalty box. You can't take dumb penalties, and what we've seen in the games against Oshawa in the last few weeks is that it is very physical. It's very intense. Jacob Oster has found himself in the middle of scraps numerous times. It has been a bloodbath. So on paper, this should be a quick series. I think we can all agree on that. There's so many factors in this one that are very hard to predict. And namely, it's where's Ottawa playing? We're in Gatineau. It's not a traditional home game. So I think Ottawa's home ice advantage has been one of the best in the league so far this year too. So if Oshawa wants to kick the door open in game 1, I think that opportunity is there. That being said, I just don't think they have the talent yet. They're a very, very young team. Callum Ritchie is there, and Seneke is there. But those are guys that are going to be more scary next year and the year after, I think. So I do think Oshawa does steal a game in this series. I think it'll be when they return home, whether it's game 3 or 4, I don't know, but I'm going Ottawa 5.
Fascinating. And there's obviously a huge goalie mismatch potentially here. I mean, in terms of Colin McKenzie versus Jacob Oster.
It could still be Max Donoso. We don't
Yeah,
really
it could
know
be.
what's going to
We
happen
don't know yet. But I mean, Colin McKenzie's second in the league, had a 928 save percentage, 1.88 goals against average. Do you think it's possible to make him look more human in the playoffs, or do you think he's going to be able to carry that through in this postseason?
I think the interesting thing with that is with the situation they're in with 2 goalies, like they won the Pinckney for a reason, right? So I do think we'll see both in the playoffs for whatever reason. Max Donoso is coming off of an injury that he suffered in the last weekend of the season too, so that's another factor to pay attention to. But if you do manage to knock one off their game, I think the other one's going to be there ready to go. So, that's huge for Ottawa to have 2 guys that are playing really well headed into the postseason.
Alrighty, so Frankie's saying Ottawa in 5. What are you saying, Josh?
Well, no more e-bugs is what I'm saying. Sam Hillebrand can stay with the Colts for now. No more e-bug situation for Ottawa. But I am going to go the opposite direction, or not the opposite direction, but I'm going to go
you don't even try
one step further than Frankie and say this is going to be a clean sweep if we've ever seen one for Ottawa. They are, well, I watched it. I had the pleasure of watching that team in person from about 2 hours before puck drop to the end of the game. That is one scary team. Now, I'm not buying into them to the hype as a whole for the rest of the playoffs, because at the end of the day, I do think the Colts could actually take a series from them in the playoffs. But that's this topic for another time. I think this is going to be a clean sweep. They are elite offensively, and even when they're not playing their best, my goodness, it can turn on a dime so fast.
particularly at home.
Particularly at home. And at the end of the day, Oshawa's not very good. And that is pretty much the story of that. And as much as I love just like the Generals and their brand and like all that stuff, this year is not for them. So it's going to be Ottawa in 4.
I'm in agreement with Josh there. I think this will be potentially the only sweep that we see in round 1. So I'm picking Ottawa in 4 as well. Moving on to the next matchup, we got the North Bay Battalion with a record of 48-17-2-1, second in the East, matching up against the Mississauga Steelheads. They finished 7th in the East with a record of 31-31-6. These are the key stats going into this one. Goals for 285 to 226 in favor of North Bay. Goals against North Bay only gave up 183 compared to the Steelheads 258. So looking at goal differential, the Steelheads had a negative 32 goal differential, the second worst of any playoff team, while North Bay had a plus 102. So similar to the series that we just talked about. The Battalion are 10-0 coming into this, while the Steelheads are 3-7. And I'll just give my initial thoughts on this. Obviously, with Mississauga, they sold huge at the trade deadline, getting rid of Owen Beck, Ethan Del Mastro, Luca Del Balbaruz, sorry. And they're basically just left with James Hardy trying to do whatever they can and the younger players on this squad. It's tough. This could honestly end up being a sweep too, but I think it's going to end up being North Bay in 5. And I'll let you guys take it away, starting with you, Josh.
I love that analysis, Jordan, because I'm in agreement with you. This could easily be a sweep, but I do think North Bay takes it in 5. This is not close. Like, we just went from like one end of the spectrum to the other. Ottawa and Oshawa is not close. This is almost in that realm. North Bay is on an 11-game winning streak entering the playoffs. And I think what sums it up the most is the last game of the regular season, where Mississauga, if they won and Sudbury lost, Mississauga would not have to play North Bay. But instead, North Bay, without Josh Bloom, without Matvey Petrov, without Dom DiVincentis between the pipes, still dominated Mississauga. And they didn't have basically any of their starters. Liam Arnsby also was not playing in the game. It was atrocious. And Mississauga had all their regulars in the lineup. So if I'm being totally real with you guys, this is going to end quick.
Yeah. To me, this is actually the biggest gap between two teams. Like, I know you guys say the Ottawa-Oshawa series is not close. For as not close as that might be, this is even more not close to me, which is really sad because James Hardy's going to go out in 4.
Well, you think so, yeah. Well, this makes sense because we're looking at we looked at a full season sample size, but think about how the Steelheads have been since the trade deadline and how depleted their group is now.
Like, it's not, they haven't been awful. They just have not been good. So
I mean, who knows? Maybe Luke Misa is the reason they win a game. I don't know.
But it's not
if
only
any
just...
Misa is going to carry their team to victory, it's not going to be Luke. I'm sorry.
And it's not even just, playing North Bay. It's that playing in North Bay is really hard.
It's really difficult for a visiting team. And I did that trip. Boys, I did that trip earlier this year, and that was just a regular matinee on a Sunday afternoon. That building gets loud, and it is just a hostile environment to play in. Like, the whole intro with the tank and everything, like, it is, like, it's almost like a WWE match because of how hyped the crowd gets.
And to me, that's a big part of it, right? Because North Bay is going to have that massive home advantage.
I mean, we talk about home ice advantage. Frankie alluded to it earlier with the 67s playing in Gatineau. Like, man, North Bay really feeds off that home ice advantage. Like, it's crazy.
But coincidentally, Mississauga doesn't have that at all. So I think this will be quick. Like, Mississauga, to me, they stand no chance. They can put that on their bulletin board, and if they want, I don't care.
Well, that's what Frankie is predicting. So that's his only sweep so far. And as we'll continue further in this Eastern Conference.
Actually, that's not true. I picked Sarnia to sweep Guelph.
Oh, okay, so he's got 2. Let's see if he has 3 or 4 coming up. Alrighty, now to talk about our last 2 series, let's get started. This is going to be a big one.
These are exciting.
Oh, for sure.
You see my face? I'm so excited.
So let's tee this one up. So the Barrie Colts, who had a record of 42, 17, 6, and 3, were third in the East this year, are matching up against the Hamilton Bulldogs. They finished 6th in the East with a record of 33, 35, and 0. And here are the key stats going into this series. Goals for, Barrie leads 284 to 226. And when it comes to goals against, Hamilton gave up 251, while the Colts gave up 239. So looking at goal differential, Barrie was a plus 45, while Hamilton was a minus 25. Now the Colts are 8-1-0-1 in their last 10 games of the regular season. The Bulldogs 4-5-1, struggling a bit. What do you think, Mr. Josh Kim, on how this series is going to go?
Well, I told Frankie this in Ottawa. Hamilton's not a team I want to play in the playoffs. I think they are dangerous in the sense that they've got some talent, and especially with Nick Lardis and Sahil Panwar, the way that those two guys have been playing. Jorian Donovan has taken a great step forward in his development after being drafted last year. They're a dangerous team. And if we want to talk about home ice advantage, my goodness, am I expecting the Bulldogs fans to pack that building because they know they're not coming back at all. So, with all that being said, I'm taking the Colts in 5 or 6. I think Hamilton's dangerous, but Barrie, I'm telling you guys, and this is going to sound biased, but from a structure standpoint, from a roster construction standpoint, the Barrie Colts are one of the best assembled teams in the league this year. From top to bottom, depth scoring, depth defense, the whole 9 yards. I think they're a dangerous team. The guys have been feeling great since the deadline. They've been the best team in the league since the deadline. I think that's worth something taking into the playoffs. And based on how last year ended, I think a lot of people are overagers, and Evan Vierling and Ethan Cardwell are hungry to end their OHL careers on a good note before they look towards the future. And so, with that being said, and round 1 gets going tomorrow, Colts in 5 or 6. Most likely 6, but I'll say 5 or 6 for flexibility.
There's also a certain guy named Brant Clark. You may have heard of him in terms of him coming back from the Los Angeles
I wasn't
Kings.
trying to pump his tires too much. He's been really good, or he's just been okay. But
how did you celebrate Brant Clark Day and Jack Mateer Day?
Yes, because Jack Mateer is definitely the centerpiece of that day in Ottawa. Sorry,
He was. It's 2 separate days that are on the same day, Josh.
Stop it.
Don't offend Frankie.
They honored. Sorry, I love Jack Mateer. I like the way he plays, but we were some of us were talking after the game. We were like, you look at Brant Clark and you look at what he did for the World Junior team, and then you look at Jack Mateer, who rode the bench for most of the tournament. I don't know. That just sounds a little.
I'm not sure if the decision to keep him on the bench, we can go back and talk about that. I don't think it was necessarily the right decision.
Maybe not. Yeah.
But I think in Jack's case, he's just more of a defensive guy, right? He doesn't really get the credit he deserves.
But I do think it's a really cool day for both of them, and especially in Ottawa, I think. And I saw Sault Ste. Marie popped off when Jack went to the World Juniors. Yeah. Really cool. Back to the topic at hand. The Colts, I think, are taking this series. I don't think it should be very close. I don't think it should go 7. I doubt maybe it even goes 6 games, but the Colts have just been on a tear. And if we want to talk about teams just riding into the playoffs on a hot streak, the Colts are right among the top. So, yeah.
I wish I could agree with you, Josh, just to antagonize you, as revenge for you wearing this Generals jersey. But you are right. I think this will be not easy by any means, because Hamilton is a very spirited young team, but at the same time, they are a very young team. You don't typically expect those teams to do exceptionally well in the playoffs a lot of times. And I just think this might get out of hand on them early, and they're going to have a chance to claw it back, but ultimately come up short. So what I picture happening in this series is, Barrie gets up 2 games, maybe even 3 games, and then Hamilton pieces together a couple, and Barrie finally finds a way to close that out. So I'm gonna go Barrie in 6.
I could see that, Frankie, and I could see, actually, to your point, I could see Colts taking the first 2 at home, but Hamilton answering right back and taking their 2 at home, and then going the best of 3, and then Barrie just taking the last 2. I definitely think that could be for sure.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a team that when you back them up against the wall, they're going to really come out, and it's going to be very hard to finish off that series. They're young, but they're spirited. Like I said, they're physical, so they're going to take a toll on you. They're going to find those scrappy goals. They're an exceptionally well-coached team. So I don't think anybody wants to play them. Anybody that's going up against them wishes they could play somebody else.
If I'm being honest, though, I think the Colts are really well shaped. That's why I was talking about Oregon, roster structure. I think they're actually really well shaped to take on someone like that, because we also have a lot of physicality on our team. And we've seen in the season series, it was intense. Those games are intense. So I'm just intrigued to see how, our guys would answer the call to that. I definitely see it being a back and forth almost. But yeah, I think the Colts are going to come out on top just better overall.
The Brantford Bulldogs will be a cheat code next year.
Anson Thornton deserves some praise too. For goalies that have played 11 or more games, he's 5th in the league, and I think he could definitely help out, especially with the defense in front of him, right? So I'm in agreement with you guys. I'm gonna say Colts in 6, but it will be a difficult one, especially with the Bulldogs at home and with those rowdy fans.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I think the second round matchups are going to be even harder to predict when we get there. So
if we get there. I hope
before we get there, we still have one more series to predict, and that's the Peterborough Petes finishing fourth in the East with a record of 35, 29, 2-2, going up against the Sudbury Wolves. They were fifth in the East, a record of 31, 28, 6-3. And here are the key stats going into this series. Sudbury led in terms of goals for, 272 to 247. But in terms of goals against, Sudbury only gave up 207, while the Petes gave up 260. So looking at goal differential, Peterborough had a plus 40, Sudbury had a plus 12. So not too far apart. And that's what we have going into this one. Frankie, do you think this could be a 7-game series, or could you see it maybe being a bit, otherwise?
I could see this being a very, very good series. And I do want to mention, I'm not going to call any team dirty on this show. You know what I mean? But I do think that it's amazing that two teams that finished first, Sudbury, by the way, 902 penalty minutes this year, and Peterborough finished with 829. That is, both teams are top 5 in the league in that. So I think Peterborough and Sudbury playing against one another is going to be chaos. It's going to be scraps after the whistle, fights. There's going to be massive hits. There's probably going to be some cheap shots. There's probably going to be a suspension for a slew foot in there. This is a series that neither team can bully their way out of, and I think both teams kind of win their games that way a lot of times. So I actually have an upset in this series. For whatever reason, I think Peterborough hasn't gelled together enough, and Sudbury has been peaking at the right time. I think that Sudbury is going to take this series to the Petes and win in 7.
That is an upset too, because looking at the Pete's deadline, adding Owen Beck, they added Brendan Othman earlier in the year. They're trying to go for, a championship run. And if they get outed in the first round like that, that would be just so disappointing. What do you think, Josh?
For once, I actually agree with Frankie.
What do you mean for once? We've agreed on most of these tonight.
I am taking Sudbury in 7 games. And the reason I'm taking Sudbury in 7 games is because if we look at pound for pound, offensive unit versus offensive unit, Sudbury's is just better as a team. Cohesively, they are better. And they score more. David Goyette, Quentin Musty, Coach Adelic, Matthew Mania, I know he's a defenseman, but he's been good. I just think from an overall chemistry and team perspective, I have not seen enough to convince me otherwise from Peterborough. Sudbury, as Frankie mentioned, is peaking at the right time. Wolves are taking the upset, I think.
And I do want to point out, too, when it comes to the physicality side, would we all agree that it seems that when you go to Sudbury, things just, you get away with more? You're able to just do a little bit more. And I think that's kind of the game that Sudbury has. So Peterborough's gonna be able to do it, but they're gonna get it back just as hard. And I've found that they tend to lose their cool a little bit, that team. So if they can't keep it under control, they're gonna be in the penalty box a lot, which they were in the regular season. And if you do that in the playoffs, that's gonna come back to bite you eventually. So it's, like I said, I think it's going to be a great series. There's going to be so much reason to watch that one. And I think Sudbury just matches up really well against the Petes.
Yeah, I think Othman and Beck will be the guys a lot of people will be looking at regarding the Petes, but don't forget about Tucker Robertson, their leading scorer, having 90 points, was in the top 10 in OHL scoring. What interests me, though, about Sudbury is which goalie are they going to start? They got Nate Krawchuk, who's played 25 games, and they also got Kevin Broussard, who's played 22. So I'll be curious to see.
I think they're going Broussard for sure.
But what I think, based on that split and just the way they're going, is if one of them has a bad game, I think they're easily going to put the other guy in, so there's not necessarily a clear-cut starter in that case.
Yeah.
So in terms of predictions, then, I'm going to say Peterborough wins 7. I'm going to be a bit different here. I think their talent will prevail, and it will help them get to the second round. I'm not going with the upset.
That's by far our closest series, though. We all have us going 7.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Flint and Saginaw are going to be closer than that, but that's just me.
Okay, Josh. Okay. We get it. We're different. But overall, guys,
Like a Generals jersey and you work for the Colts. Like, what is wrong with you?
No, I love the Colts. I don't have a Colts jersey yet, but we'll see.
What?
wait, you
What?
don't have a Colts jersey? Do you work for the team?
No, I don't.
Go
Damn.
bug the equipment manager
Shouldn't have
and
said
tell
that.
him you want a jersey.
What? Is it?
You want
Yeah.
signed by all the
Are you,
guys.
are you
Like,
gonna
what is
get
wrong
a?
with
Are
you?
you gonna get a player jersey? Are you gonna get a jersey with your own name on it?
Actually, getting the guys all to sign it would be kind of cool. Actually,
I have one. It's going to be up on this wall behind me here, back here.
sounds good. Nice flex, Frankie. Jeez.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Hey, you could do what the Gatineau Olympics. So they have all of their photographers. They wear a jersey with number 1, and it says "Photographie" on the back.
That's so stupid.
You
Alrighty,
should do
guys. So just one last question here, because we're going to be doing this, we're going to be doing a second round bracket. We're going to be doing conference final and then final. But I'll ask you the early question: who's winning it all this year? If you just had to
Oh,
take
I
a
don't want to
guess,
answer this question.
just early guess. We'll see. We might hold you to it or not, but let's just have it on the record. Who are you picking? Just
Like
out of
in the
all of these
OHL?
teams. Yes. If you had to pick one team right now.
Oh boy, that's tough.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you, Jordan. I have to say Ottawa. If I go back to the rink tomorrow, having not said Ottawa, they might boot me out. So my answer is Ottawa.
Are you in agreement, Josh? Or are you picking
I'm
North
telling
Bay,
you right
maybe?
now,
If you
I
don't
can
back
honestly,
Barrie, Josh, if you don't back
I
Barrie
can put money down that Ottawa's not winning the OHL championship.
Okay, I don't like you that much.
Well, you
to be
must have a
honest.
team then.
I can put money down that they're not. I think.
I quite dislike you tonight.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Yeah, I'll have to back up Barrie. I think the roster construction is going to carry them far. I think Brent Clark's going to go even crazier in the playoffs. Colts are beating whoever in the West to take the OHL championship.
That was a really bad question, to be honest with you, Jordan. We have to back
Yeah,
our
it
own
was
team.
awful.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
like
I
the
guess
only one who can really answer that one.
it's difficult. I'm going to say Ottawa for now, so I'm going to go into Frankie's corner there.
Yeah.
guys.
I like you, Jordan. I like
Okay.
you.
Okay.
I mean, statistically, it should happen, but the playoffs, obviously, everything gets reset to 0, and we'll see ultimately what ends up happening. But thanks, everybody, for watching this edition of the O-Talk podcast, as we'll be going through the entire playoff run, going through the tremendous stories that are going to be developed. This is truly, we're getting into the best time of the year here, fellas. Aren't you in agreement to that?
If the Colts lose in the first round, I am resigning from this
Or
show.
the most disappointing or
Yeah.
devastating.
Yeah, dude, it's the best time of the year, but it's simultaneously the worst time of the year.
At least for the
I'm gonna
Steelheads,
be-
though, they have no expectation, the Steelheads, so I don't know.
You know what? You
I'm
say
not gonna
that
be
like it's a good
devastated.
thing, but yet last year with the 67s, we were the 7 seed and we got swept, but could have won 3 of those games. It was awful. It was quite miserable.
But overall, guys, thanks for hopping on here, and we'll be on once a week, hopefully, just talking about all the crazy stuff going on in the OHL. Crazy episode we got here today. Any last thoughts, guys? Starting with you, Frankie.
Giddy up, baby.
God, get the heck out of here. That is our hashtag. Don't you dare.
We're doing the cowboy hats, so
Okay, well, you just stole that from us, so
well, I don't
that's
care.
fine. Yeah, okay, so you guys are frauds and you're okay with that. So that's all I gotta say.
We have for the X2, so
Go Colts and go Generals. That's all I gotta say, man.
this guy, dude, I'm not even cheering for. Actually, I'm not cheering for Hamilton because I don't want to see them.
Let's go, Gens. Upset coming.
Alrighty, guys. For Frankie and Josh, this is Jordan, and this has been the Yo Talk podcast. We'll see you next week.